Hello, thank you for being here with me and your interest in learning about Amanita Muscaria. My name is Sydney Kitchell-Williams with Daughter of Earth, Crafts and Medicinals, and this presentation I'll be talking about the ethnomycology and medicinal use of the fly agaric mushroom. In this presentation, I'll talk about a brief introduction and go into the ethnomycology and origins of Amanita Muscaria. I'll then talk about the first ethnographic accounts and the folklore and mythology behind the mushroom. Then we'll talk about the scientific research and its various chemical components and the many ways to work with Amanita. I'll then share some of my personal experience working with the mushroom and Amanita today. I also have a list of some of my references cited and a closing statement. Amanita muscaria is the most famous yet misunderstood mushroom of all. It goes by many names and is often associated with being either a poison or a medicine. It goes by many names and is often associated with Christmas time, winter solstice, New Year celebrations, fairies, gnomes, fantasy land, and in our modern culture of the mushroom emoji on our cell phone and the Super Mario Brother power-up mushroom. It's also often confused with psilocybin, but it's a different family, genus, species, a completely different processing method and experience than psilocybin. It's also psychoactive and not a psychedelic. Amanita muscaria is also confused with the death cap in Destroying Angel and the panther cap. And it goes by so many names. Less common is wapak, which is the Siberian indigenous Koryak name. And wapak means wolf trap. And it's called wolf trap because it mimics the wolf's eagerness to get the treat inside the trap. And so they call this mushroom wolf trap because it mimics the same behavior that humans react to finding and harvesting the mushroom. That the people are eager to harvest the mushroom, yet it can also be a trap. In Russian, it's known as muhomor. Greek, Amanita is a fungus, and in Latin, musca means fly. In Old English, it's known as fly agaric, and agaric means medicinal fungi, and it's also known as a toadstool, which means poisonous mushroom. So again, there's that both medicine and poison connotation. And it's known as a fly insecticide all over the world and as early as the 13th century. So Amanita is part of the Amanitaceae family, and it is a guild fungi, Agaricles. And these types of mushrooms first arrived during the Cretaceous period, 182 to 156 million years ago. Mushrooms in general are younger than plants, though older than animals, and genetically they are closer to us human beings than they are with other trees and plants. Amanita muscaria first came on board 66 to 43 million years ago. There's about 600 different species of Amanitaceae, and many of them contain deadly amatoxins, like previously mentioned, the death cap and Destroying Angel, which are known to cause kidney failure and death. Interesting for Amanita in particular, it is the only guild fungi to develop underground before it fully expands. Amanita muscaria originates in the Siberian Varangian region and is considered a cosmopolitan all throughout the Northern Hemisphere. It definitely prefers cooler, temperate forests and woodlands and is considered invasive in the Southern Hemisphere. And it actually broke off and became a truffle in southwestern Australia and northern Africa. Amanita has a symbiotic relationship with particular tree species, and it has a mycorrhizal growing system. So it grows in conjunction with these certain tree root systems. And because of this, they can't be farmed like any other type of mushroom. Mushrooms in general are decomposers, and they help clean out toxins throughout the environment. And this is noted within Amanita Muscaria that lab testing has been done and heavy metals were found in the base of the mushroom that connects to the earth within the bulb and vulva. Its fruiting period is from late fall to early winter and is favored by bears, reindeer, caribou, chipmunks, squirrels, tigers, flies, wolves, and humans. Here in Sebastopol, we have the flavivulvatas, the formosas, and the pantherinas. The first written documentation that we have with people using Amanita Muscaria was in 1730 to 1736 with the writings of P.J. von Strahlenberg. He was a Swedish colonel in a Siberian prisoner of war camp for 12 years, and he documented the relationship between Russians and the Koryak people. So the Russians would trade furs to the Koryaks in exchange for the Amanita, and Strahlenberg documented the intoxication by Russians with Amanita. And what I mean by intoxication means light drunkenness, so laughing, singing songs, the typical scene you would imagine at a pub. Then in 1733 through 1743 was the Great Northern Expedition, or Second Kamchatka Expedition. Peter the Great of Russia commissioned a mapping expedition in 1731 and commissioned scientists and researchers from the Imperial Academy of Sciences in St. Petersburg to initiate this mapping expedition. So Professor Johann George Gmelin and naturalist Stefan Krasheninov documented the Amanita use by the Koryak and Kazakh people. And they published their findings in a 2-volume publication in 1755 called The Descriptions of the Land of Kamchatka. Then in 1785 to 1795, additional documentations were made with ethnographic, landscape, and cultural use of the people in that area. Many publications were written during that time, descriptions of the land of Kamchatka, its inhabitants, their culture, way of life, and customs, ethnographic materials of the Northeastern Geographic Expedition, and description of the peoples of Siberia in the first half of the 18th century. Written by Steller, Lindenau, and Merrick. Then in 1897 to 1902 was the Jessup North Pacific Expedition, which was an anthropological feat to document the relationship between the people of the Siberia, Alaska, and north coast of Canada. Franz Boas was a famous anthropologist, and he documented the cultural exchange on the either side of the Bering Strait. And then in 1900 and 1904, Eilson and Bogoros-Tan were ethnographers who studied the Amanita use from the Jessup North Pacific Expedition. And in 1957, Robert Gordon Wasson and his wife were the first to combine the mycology and ethnobotanics on Amanita in their publication, Mushrooms, Russia, and History. Unlike psilocybin, Amanita is the OG magic mushroom. It is the original one. It has the longest traditional use of medicinal use and for food and spiritual purposes. It has 50,000 plus years of use, and it's used for sacred and magic activities. Indigenous cultures would use it to recite epics and sing songs, and they would also use it for working and hard physical labor and to do heroic actions. So food, it was used for people to help them with physical strength. You know, they work in these snowy environments, so to hunt walrus and whales and tan hides in the snow is physically, takes a lot of energy. So, and to follow migration of reindeer through these snowy conditions is very hard on the body. So they would use it to give them a burst of energy and endurance. Male bears would also use it during mating season to give them courage, and reindeer go out of their way in excitement to find and eat Amanita. Indigenous use, it was used for spiritual purposes, for shamanic work. It's known as an entheogen, which is a psychoactive substance that induces alterations in perception, mood, consciousness, cognition, or behavior of the purposes of spiritual development or otherwise in sacred contexts. So the indigenous people believe that Amanita was a fallen star endowed with magic. Their creation god for the Korak people believed that their creation god spat on the earth and became Wapak. So because of this, it's considered taboo and forbidden for consumption, and was only reserved for shamans to do spiritual work for themselves and for the community. And so they would consume the Amanita to give them courage to enter and face the spirit world. And once they did that, they would respectfully meet with the mannequin, which is the spirit being of the Amanita, an anthropomorphic being which takes on bipedal and human type characteristics. And so the shaman would tell the mannequin, the Amanita being, why they are consuming Amanita, what is their purpose for it. And then the mannequin would also ask them, why do you want to meet with me, basically. And it was important to be really clear and respectful in your requests, or else the mannequin can be mischievous and maybe not take you where you wanted to go or take you somewhere else. So it's important to just be clear and respectful of why you're communing with Amanita. So the shamans would often take Amanita to communicate with their ancestors and any earth spirits for particular information, like what's a good treatment for a disease or newborn baby names, also with problem solving and dream interpretation. There's also accounts of fortune telling from the past and present and flying over different parts of the earth. These answers would sometimes be given through songs, and would also help them remember their family songs. So each person in the family would have their own unique song, melody that they would sing. And when a person passed away, they would recite this person's name song. And so they would sing it during special times or at night before bed, and just help really ingrain that memory of their family member through song, and it's passed down through generations. So there's this really deep tie to ancestry and family and deep root connections. And here we have pictures of rock art of the Arctic Circle of the Petagumal region of Chukotka. And they are people, magic mushroom people, and whale hunting. So this day and age, we are considered to be in a renaissance of remembrance. And what I mean by that is there was thousands of years of Amanita use and knowledge lost during various wars, the beginnings of which started long ago during the conquest of Siberia by the Russian Cossacks. This was from 1580 to 1778. Through the onslaught of the Russian Cossacks, they went into the area and killed the shamans and displaced 50+ tribes to try to eradicate them from their native land and dismantle their peaceful culture. Then again, in 1929 to 1953, Stalin, under the USSR, had a military campaign to claim eastern Siberian territories, of which resulted in more deaths and dispersal of these indigenous tribes. In the United States, we had the war on drugs in the 60s and 70s, where the FDA primarily focused on cannabis and psilocybin, and at that time they considered Amanita non-threatening, so Amanita therefore went under the radar. And today, in 2024, Amanita is considered legal throughout the United States, except in Louisiana And it's also legal in most international countries except in Australia, Romania, and it's illegal to sell in Poland. So there's a renaissance of remembrance of trying to figure out what exactly this mushroom is all about and its medicine and connecting back to traditional use. And we have clues of this from indigenous interviews and ethnographic accounts, folklore and mythology and religious texts and lab science. Some of the leading Amanita researchers are Dr. Ewa Maciejczak, Dr. Kevin Feeney, Dr. Baba Masha, Rob Tullas, Amanita Dreamer, Robert Gordon Wasson, Michael Wilson, and many, many others. And this picture here is Tatiana Erkachin in 1994. She's a 7th generation shaman of the Tungus tribe, of the people who coined the term shaman. Aside from gathering information as to how this mushroom was utilized in the past from ethnographic accounts and indigenous interviews, we can harness more information how this mushroom was used through religious texts. And one of the oldest religious texts that we have is the Rig Veda, written by Indian Vedics. The Rig Veda was written over 3,500 years ago, and it's a collection of hypnotic Sanskrit hymns that were sung primarily by these Vedic priests during particular fire rituals. Their literature describes Soma, which was the god of plants and was also a religious sacrament used by these Vedic priests. And it was described to be a plant extract that was sacrificed to the fire and then consumed. And Soma was an important deity of Hinduism after their gods Agni and Indra. And according to the Vedas, Indra brought Soma down from the heavens for the benefit of both people and the gods. It was known to be a cure-all for perfect health, to increase the lifespan of small immortality, and holy men who used Soma were known to be hundreds of years old. It was also used as an avenue to enlightenment and to produce extraordinary psychic and physiological abilities. And it was in 1968 where Robert Gordon Wasson first theorized that Soma was a ritual drink of Amanita Muscaria. And then there's the correlation with the Celtic Druids, who were the highest of the pagan hierarchy. They were magical philosophers who deeply knew and understood the forest very well, and they also held secret religious sacraments that they offered to their initiates. Their goddess Brigid was one of their primary goddesses, also known as patron saint Brigid. And she has similar attributes that are associated with Amanita Muscaria in that she has red hair. She's known for medicine and poetry and the arts, for brewing, known to have the hearth fire, home and hearth, blacksmithing, music, fertility, and bringing life back from wintertime. She's also a triple-headed goddess, so the number 3 is very important to the Druids. And there's also the correlation with the mistletoe, oak tree, and Amanita relationship. So the oak tree was very sacred to the Druids, and they believed it was a direct line, came directly from the heavens, and it produced healing powers, and they would have rituals underneath oak trees. Mistletoe was also revered by the Druids, and they grow on the oak tree branches, and the mistletoe was revered for fertility. And Amanita also grows under oak trees in certain regions, and it's also known that there's a red speckled salmon to give immortality and superpowers. Then we have a mythic demigod warrior named Chulainn of the Irish Celtic mythology, and he was known to have superhuman strength, go into a fierce battle fury of berserk raging. There's a tale of him being met with a green-cloaked woman who beckoned him to fight for her people in the She realm, which is the other world of the fairies. And as you can see with Chulainn and Brigid, they both have halos around their head. And usually halos around people's head is indicative of someone who is considered wise, holy, or imbued with knowledge. And you can see here on the picture of Saint Brigid, the upper right-hand corner, Brigid's halo looks very much similar to the underside of a dried Amanita cap. Other cultural uses that have been documented are associated with Buddhism during the 2nd and 9th centuries, and it's theorized that they would also use Amanita as a path to enlightenment. And there are statues here in the upper left corner of statues from China that are with people and mushrooms that very much look like Amanita Muscaria. There's also the tradition of urine drinking, in that the body becomes a distillation mechanism, and this has been documented through reindeers and humans. Humans would drink the urine of the reindeer, and humans would drink other humans or their own urine, because the body would act as a distillation process, so therefore can convert the toxic properties that we'll discuss later through the body, urinate it, and then through the urination it becomes more clear and processed, and the negative effects like nausea that's sometimes associated with this mushroom is very much dissipated through that urine process drinking. Tatiana Kachin also recounts the Vikings drinking urine and as a giving energy before the battle. And there's this connection with the Vikings and Berserkers that they think maybe the Vikings drank Amanita tea before they went into their fits, but that's not really fully supported, and instead it's thought to have been a combination of datura and black henbane. But there are reports of Russian peasants drinking the urine of the wealthier Russians during the 18th century. They would have wooden bowls and collect the urine as the wealthier Russians would step outside and urinate off the side, and the peasants would eagerly collect the urine in their wooden bowls. There's also a correlation with the Nordic and German god Odin and early Christianity, although that theory is highly controversial. Also ties with possible correlation with the Greek oracles of Delphi, Rome Mithraic mysteries, and in Guatemala and Mexico there's the thunderbolt legend, and it has correlation with after a thunder and lightning storm, mushrooms tend to fruit soon after that event. There's the correlation with Christmas time and possibly being the origins of Christmas time. Saint Nick, Santa Claus, is a seasonal guest who arrives on flying reindeer, bearing gifts and wearing a costume of red and white colors. It's also associated with the indigenous Sami people, who were reindeer herders of Norway, Finland, and Sweden. And as previously mentioned, Amanita likes the cooler, temperate forests, and they grow under certain particular trees like pines and conifers and evergreens. And reindeer, as mentioned before, also love to eat Amanita, and they will become intoxicated. And so there's clues there of the flying reindeer. Then when Amanita was harvested, it was hung upside down to dry. And this was done either outside or hanging upside down on their evergreen tree or in front of the fireplace, the hearth. And there's clues there with the Amanita hanging upside down in the tree is very resembling to red round ornaments, and with the stockings with gifts hanging by the chimney with care, again has a similar connection to Amanita dehydration process. Then, of course, we would leave out milk and cookies for Santa as an offering, and the dried Amanita caps with the milk would be a fly insecticide. So that's commonly used all throughout the world. And also as an offering and a religious sacrament. And yeah. Although today the Sami people deny the connections to the origins of Christmas time and the story of Saint Nick, and reject the use of Amanita today. In 1811 was Berkana and Schroeder, who were the first scientists to perform research to determine the active and toxic components within Amanita muscaria. And it was determined that the colored part of the cap has the highest active properties, the stem has even less than the cap, and the bulb or vulva has even less than the stem. The warts, which are the white speckled dots on the top of the cap, are the remnants of the universal veil and are thus considered neutral. But it's important to have a critical eye on the scientific research that has been done in the past, because oftentimes they are testing on animals and not human beings, and they are using methods that have not been traditionally used. So these lab testing, they used concentrated synthetic lab-created forms of ibutenic acid, and which they determined is a neurotoxin, and they injected it into these brains of these rodents. So they completely ignored the traditional use methods, and from them learning that it's a neurotoxin, more misinformation, more mycophobia, and taboo of use of this mushroom spread even further. So it's really important to really be critical of the scientific research literature articles that come out and not just take them as blind faith and accept them as truth. You have to read between the lines. You have to have discernment and understand that they are only touching a small portion of information here. We can't just accept it as full truth. You have to read between the lines. And know that it's important to have all chemical components within Amanita to have a well-rounded medicinal effect. Indigenous people would never inject high concentration of one chemical into their brains. They never did that. So these chemical constituents that are in Amanita are composed of proteins, enzymes, and fats, and they are all needed to have a well-balanced medicinal effect. But fortunately, through the scientific research that's been done, we have been able to isolate many of the components in the mushroom, and we still have so much to learn about them. Some of the more researched chemical constituents and their actions that we have learned about thus far are 4 primary chemical compounds within Amanita muscaria, and they are ibutenic acid, muscimol, muscazone, and muscarine. Ibutenic acid, as mentioned before, is an excitatory neurotoxin, and the body can only tolerate a small amount, and you will have ill effects in raw high doses. It has yang energetics, and it's an energetic stimulant and known to induce states of euphoria, and it helps with focus, and it's also water soluble, which means it's easily extracted into water. Muscimol is created when ibutenic acid loses an oxygen molecule from heat exposure through the process of decarboxylation. Muscimol is the more potent and sought-after chemical, and it has yin energetics. It's known to be a neuroprotectant, and it helps repair the myelin sheath around nerve cells. It also activates the GABA analog in our brain, and it's known to have anticonvulsant, sedative, and anti-anxiety properties. It's also analgesic, which acts as a pain relief. It increases the human growth hormone and has anti-aging and anti-inflammatory properties. It promotes healing and sleep and produces feeling of well-being and improves vision and intellect. It also stimulates and protects the memory and helps with the immune system. It also helps heal trauma and is also water soluble. Muscazone is a derivative only found in Amanita muscaria and is known to fight cancer and tumors, fights against bacteria, viruses, inflammation, and oxidation. Muscarine is another highly toxic chemical, but is only found in small trace amounts in Amanita, so it's not anything to worry about. But in high doses, it can, and not properly processed, it can produce saliva, tears, and gastric acid production, like sweat, nausea, and vomiting. It also works for heart regulation and eye functions, and known to lower blood pressure. It also mimics the natural neurotransmitters of the nervous system, activating memory, thinking, and learning receptors. Another really important one to mention here is vitamin D. Vitamin D is found in high amounts in Amanita than any other wild gourmet mushroom. It is known to help promote, build up mood and strength. It helps develop bone density. It's known to help with energy and endurance, and it also reduces blood pressure, muscle weakness, fatigue, and pain sensitivity. So in order to get the most bang for your buck with Amanita, it's all about how you process it. Much like cooking and baking, you're not just going to eat raw chicken by itself. You have to cook it and process it and add some things to it in order to get the most nutrition from it. Well, same thing with Amanita. Once you learn how to work with it, the possibilities and recipes you can make with it are seemingly endless. So step number one, it's so important to dehydrate it. That is the key step in the preparation method. You want to harvest your mushrooms in a clean, non-toxic environment, and then you will dehydrate your caps at about 160 degrees Fahrenheit. At this temperature, it will initiate decarboxylation from ibotenic acid into muscimol by about 30 to 65%. You'll know it's done when the caps are cracker dry and they have a baked bread smell. And through this dehydration process, significantly reduces the ill effects of nausea and gastrointestinal distress. The dehydration process also acts as a long-term storage method. Once you dehydrate it, your possibilities of working with the mushroom are now endless, pretty much. You can work with it raw. You never want to eat it raw. That's never recommended for any type of mushroom. Mushrooms have a fibrous cellulose component called chitin, and it's really hard for our bodies to digest and process. So it's any type of mushroom, it's always advised to cook it down to break down that chitin layer. Same thing with Amanita. So you can cook the Amanita raw. You can detox it in some boiled salt water, discard that water a couple times until the water is clear, and then you can then consume that mushroom material sauteed up with butter, and people say it has a wonderful umami gourmet mushroom flavor. People in Japan have also used it for food, and that they've dehydrated the mushroom, crushed it up, and then they would sprinkle it into their rice, which gives them that umami flavor that way. Once you dehydrate it again, you can make a tea out of it, use homogenized caps. Each cap has different potency in terms of ibotenic acid and their other medicinal effects, so it's important to have homogenized caps. You can then infuse your dried caps into oil or high-proof alcohol. You can infuse it into raw fermented milk and have Soma with it. You can grind it up, add it with some other herbs and fungi, make a capsule. You can smoke it. You can make a balm or salve with it. You can infuse it in honey, make a candy. Again, it's so many ways to work with it that it's just so much fun. But again, the key part is to dehydrate it and to remove some of that initiated ibotenic acid in raw form. As you can see, there are more positives than negatives that have been documented with the Amanita muscaria use. Unlike psilocybin, where psilocybin will take us out into the cosmos and we'll see geometric sacred geometry and we'll feel connected to the wider cosmos, Amanita is the human mushroom. It helps us function in our meat suits here and now. and just to be better human beings. So Amanita is helpful for balancing the mind, body, and spirit. As previously mentioned, it's a neuroprotectant, so it's great for people with cerebral palsy, epilepsy, autism, multiple sclerosis, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. As we know before, it has anti-cancerous, tumorous, anti-inflammatory properties, so it's going to be great for pain, great for allergies, asthmas, colds, reduces anxiety, depression, and PTSD. What's wonderful about Amanita is it's not addictive. So it's an excellent aid for drug withdrawals from opioids, benzodiazepines, heroin, cocaine, caffeine, nicotine, alcohol, cannabis, sugar, and so many other substances. It will help improve focus and attention, so it's great for people with ADD, ADHD, and helps improve vision and color perception. It also balances our hormones, digestion, and energy. So women going through PMS, suffering with cramps or menopause and hot flash, it will help balance those symptoms. With appetite, it will help increase or decrease the appetite cravings and will remove parasites. With energy, it helps balance us there too, in that it will give you an energy boost or help bring you down and give you deep, restful sleep. It's also great for the skin, for people suffering with psoriasis, eczema. It helps repair the skin from burns and dark spots and skin tags. And it's also known as deep shamanic psychotherapy work, particularly for areas in our lives of past lives, from pre-birth to about 6 years old, and addresses those traumas there. And it addresses shame and anger healing and boundaries and ego death. And from what I hear, that Amanita will take you to that particular part in your trauma. Say you fell off your bike at 6 years old and no one was around you to help you and you started crying because you busted your knee. But Amanita will take you to that scene and will have a bird's eye review, and that emotional connection won't be there anymore. Amanita can objectively take you to that situation and say, hey, yes, you were alone here at this moment, but your dad just got a phone call and got a notice from his work that his coworker just passed away, so he was dealing with that, so it helps you have a better, wider perspective on a trauma that has developed in that early state of your life. Some of the cons associated with it are gastrointestinal distress, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, heartburn, profuse sweating, hypersalivation, acne, fluctuating body temperature, change in urine color, irritability, headaches, lethargy, exacerbation of chronic illnesses, or having no outcome at all. Some of the high-dose cons are that the shamanic work went too deep too fast, hallucinations occur, dizziness, delirium, dysphoria, looping thoughts and behavior, seizures, muscle twitching, amnesia, blackout, coma, and death. Although death is very rare, there is more deaths reported with car accidents, other pharmaceutical drugs, alcoholism, than there has been reported with this mushroom. Some of the deaths that have been reported are associated with high alcohol intoxication with a lot of raw Amanita, eating a lot of raw Amanita, and benzodiazepines with a large amount of Amanita. This mushroom is not advised for people who are suffering from psychiatric diseases such as bipolarism or schizophrenia, women who are pregnant or nursing, people with kidney stones, or people with habitual aggressive behaviors. It's also not advised for people who are looking to party or have a trip. It's not like that type of mushroom. This is a healing mushroom, people who are on the road to recovery and want to heal themselves and their lives. One note about the cons of these documented effects: it is likely that the mushroom was not processed correctly, that these people jumped in both feet and not had caution to go slow and steady and just take small amounts of this mushroom, because it is a very potent healing mushroom, and it's best to go slow and low. Slow and steady wins the race here with Amanita. My personal experience working with Amanita Muscaria has been on a micro dosing experience. I have never macro dosed on it, just small amounts. And I've used it topically as a balm, tincture, and massage oil, and internally as a tea, smoke, capsule, and small parts of the dried cap. Most of my personal experience has been positive. It's one of the first things I noticed was that it gave me an incredible amount of motivation and energy and focus to do my work daily tasks. It gives me energy, and it's like a little bump of green tea. It's a little energy boost for me. I've also known it to help relieve my muscle pain and any skin inflammatory effects that I've been dealing with. It helps me stay calm and relaxed in high stressful situations. And it's also decreased my addiction cravings to sugar. It's increased my libido and time management skills, as well as creativity and problem-solving capabilities. I've also felt more courageous and self-confident in expressing myself and trying new things. It's also helped my earlyhood trauma and have more self-love for myself. It's also helped me to gain better understanding on spirituality and knowledge in general, and I've had a feeling of deep-rooted ancestral connection. Some of the cons that I've experienced are a sudden onset of anger and light temporary nausea with one of my capsule blends on an empty stomach. So I should have had something to eat a little bit before consuming that. Some of my psychoactive and spiritual experiences, the first time I haven't even consumed it or touched it, seeing it on the path in my neighborhood, oh my gosh, there it is. Wow, it's so amazing. It just exudes this pure love, joy, awe, and wonder and imagination with it. It opens my heart to just be in the now and just be full of love. When I harvested it and took it home, I was cleaning it with a paintbrush, and it felt like there was this sacred, wise, honored guest in my kitchen. I had to step out of the kitchen and go cry because it was such an overwhelming, powerful sensation that this mushroom is no joke. This is a sacred being. It has a lot of power and knowledge and wisdom with it and is to be respected. Again, that was me just cleaning it in my kitchen, just cleaning the dirt off with the paintbrush. I hadn't even consumed it yet. I'm already feeling these intense emotions with it, positive emotions. When I did consume it, I have noticed time being fast, slow, or not having a concept of it at all. I've also noticed that there's a mushroom spirit that comes through. The mannequin, I have met the mannequin before in my dream state, and in my dream I saw this anthropomorphic 1930s looking cartoon character of Amanita dancing around with people around a campfire, and they're all partying and dancing, yahoo, yeah, and just having a great time together. And also harvesting it, I would get a sense that it likes to play hide and seek. There's this playful trickster energy with it that I would go to see it on the path, then go to harvest it again, and it wouldn't be there. It's like whack-a-mole, so it likes to play hide and seek. There's also a mushroom voice that I've heard. Again, when harvesting, sometimes I'll hear, yay, me, woo. Or sometimes I'll hear a grumpy voice, no. So I'll take those cues as to knowing if it wants to be harvested or not. When it's happy and joyful and yay, me, it will be so easy to harvest. But if it's grumpy, it will pull back. It will not want to be harvested. So it's important to also listen to those cues. This mushroom voice, it's also an energetic, enthusiastic cheerleader to help me get my tasks done. It's also a disciplined physical personal trainer to help me stay focused and to put the blinders on to get my tasks done. And it's also a gentle and loving psychotherapist. At one point, it held my hand and lovingly addressed my big stinking pile of decomposing anger. It's like I hired a housemaid to come through, and she lovingly approaches me. Hey, there's this stinking pile of anger here. What do you want to do with it? Well, we want to get rid of it. It's just old cardboards that really just garbage and needs to be cleared out. But Amanita was so loving and gentle and helped me address those hidden emotions that I've just swept under the rug. So it's a deep cleansing mushroom. As mushrooms in general are decomposers and they clean out toxins in the environment, well, so they do within us. And I've also found that Amanita helps me suggest new ideas and gave me the brilliant idea to have my open house parties. And it also encourages its spread to other humans for their healing too. Hence why I'm doing this presentation and getting the word out about Amanita. Because Amanita Muscaria is legal throughout the United States and it's still considered under the radar, we are kind of in the wild, wild west in terms of the products that are being produced these days at a rate we've never seen before. So it's really exciting to be here now and see the journey of this mushroom and where it's going forward. Some of the products on the market today are, you can find dried caps, you can find tinctures, gummies and edible smoke blends and topical balms. You can also buy books that have been published as recent as 2023. Books that have been my pillar of information is Fly Agaric by Dr. Kevin Feeney. He's a professor at the University of Central Washington and a lawyer anthropologist, and his book is, while scientific, is very easy to read, and he goes into detail about the mythology, chemical constituents, and more discussions on the mushroom that I highly recommend. Microdosing with Amanita Muscaria by Dr. Baba Masha. She's a Russian scientist, and she talks about the microdosing and topical use and does more of like a clinical study on individuals and their effects of using Amanita Muscaria. And then there's Amanita Dreamer. She's the main woman who got me on the Amanita bandwagon, and she healed herself from benzodiazepine use and healed her brain with Amanita Muscaria, and her story is so inspiring. And she's created this book, Dosing Amanita Muscaria and What to Expect, and it's kind of like a textbook workbook on your journey working with Amanita Muscaria. She also has a shop and community groups if you want to dive deeper into the mushroom and have more of a community support realm there. She also creates her own products, tinctures, topical smoke blends, and things like that. Go check her out. She's a wonderful resource on her website. It's free information there. So myself and my small business, Daughter of Earth, Crafts and Medicinals, I'm fortunate to live in a place where Amanita grows naturally and in abundance. And my husband and I will harvest them around our property, around our home, in our backyard, or along our nature trails. And it's been such a wonderful joy every season to see these mushrooms come up, and I can't wait. Every year I'm so excited to go out harvesting, and it's just such a joy. Some of the products that I've created that I have for sale include a roll-on tincture, some balms. I also provide dried caps from our home base here in Northern California, Sonoma County, and I've made other topicals and capsule mushroom supplements. Here's a list of some of my references cited. I really went down the rabbit hole, and I'm not including every every resource that I gained my information from. There's actually so much out there. But some of my main pillars of information that I've gathered from were Amanita Dreamer, Dr. Kevin Feeney, and Dr. Baba Masha. I really encourage you to research these researchers, support their work, and buy their publications. You can watch my Amanita videos on how to make a tea, how to make a balm, or listen to my general discussions on Amanita Muscaria underneath the Herbalism Insight sections within the Hidden Grove membership. I also have my Amanita Muscaria products for sale within the Fairy Ring A Secret shop, as well as a printout PDF document of this presentation, so you can download this whole digital presentation yourself, all of the information and the references cited. Everything is included. It's a 19-page document. All right, thank you so much for being here with me today. Send me any questions you may have, and I hope this presentation helped to demystify this wonderful, magical healing mushroom. Thank you for being here with me, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care.